I'm very pleased that you're all here, that you made it, that you're interested in a topic like Snowflake and combining that with Mendix. I'm also very honored that we have like a great lineup of people. So not only one presenter, two presenters, but a full panel of real experts. It's close to a full century of experience that we have here today. And I will be happy to introduce them as soon as we come to that panel discussion. What the goal is to inspire you, to broaden your view, and especially not to replicate what's already out there. So there are quite some videos available on Mendix and blogs, etc. You can read them in your own time. So we will try to bring you something that's not available on the internet, or mostly, and some real and honest experiences from the ones here. So for those new to Snowflake, we will give you a brief introduction and first some check-in. Some hands who heard about Snowflake? That's a big majority. And then who tried it? So try to mingle, okay. It's 20% maybe. And who is using it in production already? Yeah, well then I think we have the perfect audience here. So imagine this is you. So you are creating those pretty solutions for our customers, your employer, you name it. And this is really the first image you find on Google when you look for someone being productive, then they are working on a home trainer after their computer, really. So our primary purpose is to support a business process. That's what we do. We build those applications. And then after 6 months, you see a user story like this. So we have this business controller and they're asking for dashboarding, insights, advanced filters. And that's the request after 6 months because we all know what happens later. So something like this. This is what they want. So they have this pretty business process. You're supporting that great, but this is what they want to get some insights. And yes, of course, it should have AI. Do we have experience with that? Well, not so much, but we know that there is a chart widget available. It's very powerful. You can build literally any chart. I recently found out that if you paste an image in ChatGPT and ask for the code to put into this widget, it works, really. So that's really nice. So just start building it, right? But all jokes aside, this is really something we see in our apps. Things start small, grow bigger, have more use cases, etc. So my example here is reporting, but it can be literally anything. So we live in a changing world. So scope change is one of them, but also a user base that's growing, or increasing functional scope, but also going from internal use only to external use as well. Geographic expansion, it all can have an impact on your architecture and the decisions you made earlier. So our life down the road, this is what we can see. We can run into some performance challenges because it's not meant to do the things we're asking for our app. We have hindered operations, so we are asking questions while people are actually working with that software, and actions that previously took just a few seconds now take 30 seconds because of some reason. We have increasing complexity. I've seen pretty pages that take long to load in Studio Pro. So not only in the web browser, but also in Studio Pro because of all the complexity that was added to support those filters. And we ask eventually for a larger container because that makes everything work, right? Well, we know we're already using the best low-code platform out there. So that's something to be proud of. And I think it's time to bring in this fluffy polar bear. So what is Snowflake? And in a nutshell, it's a cloud data platform as they position themselves. Let's consider it to be a data warehouse plus. So it can be more than a traditional data warehouse, but that's safe for now. It's pay-as-you-go in all access. More on that in a few seconds, but it's good to know that you start with no upfront costs. And they are a strategic Mendix partner. So they are friends, bringing some benefits as well, which we touch upon later as well. High level, the architectural Snowflake, which is one of their main values. And that's that they split the storage and the processing as separate layers, meaning that you pay per use for all those layers. So if you don't store a lot of data, but you ask a lot of questions, you only pay for asking a lot of questions. And if you don't ask a lot of questions and you only store a lot of data, you only pay for storing a lot of data. So that's the benefit there. You can consider it as paying for your microflow invocations, if you like. Other things you will like, as some might run into this before. Indexing, vacuum, tuning, it's not needed. Zero copy cloning. So click off, and you have a copy of your database that you can use in your test environments or UAT. Time travel. We can have a mental image what that entails. Strong governance. We have that in Mendix as well. But if you go to Snowflake, you will find similar features and also things like masking, audits, and other advanced governance features, which you might like. Well, some typical Snowflake and Mendix use cases. Reporting and dashboarding. It's something we will hear a lot today. But also govern data reuse outside of your application. So if you think, well, the scope of this data is not only the thing that we're delivering to our employer here, and AI use cases beyond the scope of that solution. So if you have a lot of number crunching and big data volumes, then it's very likely that you don't want to do that in your Mendix application itself. Well, this partnership we already mentioned briefly. This is what it basically entails, plus a little bit more. These are the connectors that are currently available to you. Some of them might be familiar, of which 2 of them can be found in the Mendix marketplace for most Mendix versions, at least the latest ones. And we have the Mendix data loader, which is a component that lives inside Snowflake. And more will be told by Dennis. There's more, like a lot more. Things I wanted to touch here is the Cortex API, which is basically adding some AI sprinkles on top of the things you're doing in queries. And there is a showcase app as well you can find to find these examples. But yeah, we have view entities, right? So who of you never heard about view entities? That's an honest answer. It's a really good one to look that one up, especially if you only need that one-off, more advanced query to give you that performance benefit or that special result you're looking for, and now build a loop in a loop in a loop in a loop. Then this might be the good thing to look at, and you're good to go. So give it a go. Well, I promised a demo. I should have not have done it, but I did. So we will do a small demo. It's a demo with Cortex, and luckily we were allowed to show an example of Jotun, another customer. It's also using Snowflake with a sample data set. This is the UI of Snowflake, how you can see it. As you can see, it's supporting dark themes, so that's really important. And this is public marketing data, which we see here. So you can do your queries. Everything is with queries in Snowflake, which you can imagine. And now we'll do some switching. I think it works. Yeah? Yeah. So we have this Mendix app that's currently running. So if you click through, then we will see that there will be some product details on the right side of the screen if you look here. Those are currently coming from Snowflake. And if we look at what's needed to do that, just to give you an impression of what that could look like with the database connector that's supported by Mendix, is that this only action here, query external database, it's calling a query that we predefined with a parameter, and it's returning the data that we need. To show you what that looks like in the connector itself, you can see that we have our query, which is currently just get everything based on this product ID. So you can add the parameters that you need. And when you run that query, you can actually directly query and search through your database without the need to go to Snowflake itself. So I think this is a really powerful part of that integration. You can use it as a response. You can use the response directly in your Mendix environment as well. So if you want to build a page about it, just like I did, that can be done as well.
It gets a numbers to Mendix.
Yeah, and you can even bring your own. So if you would like to do that on a persistent entity, that should be possible as well. But it's true that in the domain model, I think it's here. Yeah, in the domain model, you can use it directly. Yeah, so you don't need to do that manually, which is a big benefit over using traditional OQL, for example, where you do quite some configuration. But what I wanted to show you now is because vem snakker ikke norsk. We don't understand what's standing there because it's full Norwegian. So luckily there's something in Cortex or in Snowflake available. And I show you this query here. And that's Cortex. If you look here on this line, we can translate attributes on the fly by using those Cortex functions, which is quite nice. So we will try that. And the only thing I need to do now, because I already prepared that query, which of course was happily supported by our big friend ChatGPT. I'll look in this one. And I prepared a little microflow to give us the language of the current user. Is it happy? Seems happy. Now it's thinking really hard. Really hard. Maybe we're allowed to click back and forth.
It has to be.
Yeah, of course.
Does it translate on the fly each time, or is there, like, I'd say for each translate attributes, how does that go?
It's a very good question. So the question is whether it's doing those translations on the fly or that it's caching something or storing it in a temporary table. It's everything is on the fly. So translations are just one of the Cortex functions, but it can do a lot more. So it can also ask questions about the data that you're retrieving and adding insights on top of that, for example. So you are paying quite some LLM kind of credits to use this. So it's true if you have translations up front that you would expect, this is not the most efficient way to do so. I would certainly agree. But for the rare cases where you need translations on the fly in any kind of flexible language, you can see that the actual footprint of this logic, it's really minimal. So I don't need to do anything else compared to this one. I see that Studio Pro is thinking really hard whether they want to, luckily we have a bit more time. So I'm still in my spare time.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe additional questions? Yeah.
Cortex, is it like a library of functions you have?
You can see that it's a good question. So the question is whether Cortex is a library of functions. It's a feature on top of Snowflake, I would say, but maybe we will hear more about it later this evening. What you see here is when it comes to permissions, for example, it requires a certain role to access those features. So not by default, any user can just go full rogue on your database and do all kind of LLM stuff, because then we know that the bill will be impressive. It's
Yeah, Cortex is the AI platform or the AI functionalities of Snowflake. So that's everything related to AI. So there's different, like this is Cortex Translate, as you can see, it's Cortex.translates, and they can have different ones, like also like the ones that answer questions about that you ask them. And I'm going to tell a little bit in depth about this.
Me too.
Oh, nice.
oh, the cost. Only pennies. I will try this one more time, and otherwise we'll just move on. This is the.
What does it cost per calculation?
Well, I don't know from top of mind, but it's really doable, I would say. It's. Yeah, I was honestly surprised until now about the costs that are incurred with
like millions of cents per token.
Things like that. Yeah. We see that the language is now perfectly English, so it recognized that the language of the current user is English, and we get those answers, and they're quite spot on. So I think this is a good example of what it could entail more than just retrieving and pushing data. So that's what I wanted to show you here, and that brings us back to the presentation. And now I need to do some magic trick with. I think that should. Works.
Is it?
Because that brings us to the panel discussion. So I would be happy to invite all our panelists to take a seat, and then I will briefly go through the introduction of who we have here. Yeah. Hopefully you brought some sunglasses. You can switch places every now and then.
I think it's fine.
Well, we start off with DSI. It's Maren joins us from DSI. It's a non-profit organization in Amsterdam. It's founded by the investment industry and to strengthen trust in the financial sector as a whole. So certifying investment professionals. Currently, there are 4,500 registered professionals, all going through the major Mendix app that's living there and being used. As you can see, a Mendix customer since 2016, using Snowflake only since this year. Then we have DekaMarkt, you joined, and then we have you send a message like Dirk Kat. He opened the grocery store back in 1941, so that's some time ago. And in 1949, he opened his first self-service store in Velsen Noord under the name Kijkgrijp. I didn't know that one. It's a family business, and you also mentioned like this is something I truly like about the company. They have 105 stores in the Netherlands, so you might all know them. They're using Mendix actually since 2012 already, and you got into contact in 2009, you told me, so that's a long time ago. And they migrated from the TISA IBM stuff back in 2020, so that's where the Snowflake journey began. 9 applications, mostly smaller, 1 bigger one, and they only use it for the things that they can buy. So I think that's perfect when you consider using Mendix. We have ilionx, if I pronounce it correctly.
ilionx.
If there's no X.
That's the X.
Yeah, true. Okay, yeah. That's really how we pronounce it when we talk about you, but then we are always in doubt. But that's a good one because now we know. They're doing a lot actually, and more on the company in detail soon. But it's good to consider them as being the Snowflake experts of today. So we'll leave the rest to you at a later moment. 11 offices in the Netherlands. So yeah, and Mendix, I don't think they need an actual introduction, but I still want to name them as I'm very happy that they're here.
Yeah.
Moving on, then we have Marin, already mentioned. She's working 7 years now for DSI since yesterday. You mentioned that sound. So impressive. Recently transitioned to a digital lead, so responsible for the digitalization and innovation within DSI. And also involved in the digital strategy for the entire company. Moving on to Frans. Well, we see close to 20 years experience with business intelligence as a whole, always been with ilionx, energy formerly.
Yes.
Technical director, data and AI, so really the go-to guy if it comes to the things we discussed today. And I think you mentioned that you brought Snowflake actually in, or you were...
I didn't bring it in. I was a very happy evangelist.
Yeah.
Well, I am a very happy evangelist, but was.
And you were also advanced certified, I noticed.
Yes, I was the first in the Benelux with that. I had like 5 of them. I still only have 1 now, so.
Quite some certifications to collect, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Moving on to Joost. We collected some stats about you as well. You're with the company or the family of companies, so to say, for quite some time as well. We see 29 years, which is really impressive. I think what I really valued in what you told me is that you're a really hands-on architect. So you felt the need to do the right thing, and that got recognized. And then eventually you become an architect, and you do that for roughly 20 years. So that's, I think that's a really good way to get in such a role. The last big project was a demerger from Dirk van den Broek, which you're heavily involved in. That's not a few-week project. So,
One of the years.
yeah, so it, at least you can sleep at night. And are you now moving from reporting to a data platform when it comes to Snowflake? And when you're off, then you support KNRM, you mentioned, on events to find fundraisers, so to say. So that's nice. And then we have Dennis. Dennis is hands-on with Mendix for more than 10 years already. Previously it's not here, it's here, I think, Time Series. Yeah, that was the one. Time Series, so we know that was eventually acquired by. And now you are already 5 years with the Strategic Alliance team that once started as the AWS teams. You might remember that those were the first connectors. And now you're also involved in all those connectors. Yeah. Let's go. But first, a very big applause for our panelists.
Yeah, then.
Yeah, we collected some questions, and we will see where we're at. If you have any questions in between, please remember them for a short moment. That keeps things rolling a bit better. First of all, I would be very curious to hear, and I think that's a question mainly for you, Joost, and for you, Marin. how does Snowflake play a role in your organizations? Because that might be relevant to us. Maybe Joost, you want to start?
Yes, and first we started as a reporting agent. Lots of reports, and now it's becoming more and more a data platform, sending data to other applications, of getting data in, so that everything is on one place, calculated if needed, and then used by other applications.
And you shared this image with me. We can say that there are already quite some sources and also egress streams. We see them here. So all the blue ones are the sources that are currently flowing through their Snowflake environment. And so that's a good one. Thanks for that. Maybe Marin, you want to complete that with the journey of DSI so far?
Yes. Our use case was more like we had a BI tool, Kicks, and that wasn't working for us. We are a small company with 10. I have 9 colleagues. That's it. So Click was very expensive for us. So we searched for a new BI tooling. So we ended up with Power BI from Microsoft. But we want to put something in between Mendix app and Power BI. So then this the reason why I end up with Snowflake.
Yeah, and maybe that could also be a bridge, because I think you mentioned like replacing that BI tool, and it's really a a big drop in the cost, overall cost. It was an 80% drop on the overall footprint. So
Cost for Click were €8,000, and now we pay €16 per month.
yeah, yeah. So that's nice. And maybe another thing you already mentioned, like we wanted to put something in between. You mentioned, and just for. We like that. It's, but I think there was a reason to do so.
Click was calling the API 2 times a day, and we saw Mendix, every call, Mendix app were getting slower and slower. So we wanted a reliable app and don't want to ask the API directly to Mendix. So we put Snowflake in between, so the API doesn't, our app doesn't get busy.
Yeah. I think that explains it well, and it's also something you noticed quite fast after the release. It's so fast that I already forgot that that we had those challenges before. But yeah, it's working, and it's also some future proofing, as you see here, because there are some ambitions to do more with that data. So not only the reporting side, so therefore it's happy to have that somewhere else than your operational application. Moving on, I would be curious, maybe Joost, you can answer that, whether Snowflake has a really strategic position within DekaMarkt. Do you consider it as such?
Yes, it's the central data platform in DekaMarkt. Every data is going in, and more applications are using the data, because also we can create specific data needed for an application that uses the data. Before, we had a lot of time to connect our enterprise service bus to application, mainly because of the data model of the ERP system. That was very complex, and now we have it in Snowflake, and we can make views exactly what the consuming application needed.
Oh, that's interesting. So then you mean that the conversation challenge you had to do first, so the moving from one format to another, you first solved in your enterprise service bus, and that was challenging, or are there more maintenance? And now you have more, like the views, you replace it with views in Snowflake, and that's way more efficient and
we're reusable. We have one table with sales prices, and we don't have to do every time the calculation. In Snowflake, there is one table per article store day. It's this price, and everyone can use that every application.
I think those are the egresses that you pictured in the image.
Yeah,
I think those are the ones you're referring to.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a really good one. Are people here using enterprise service buses nowadays to do these kind of transformations by chance? Not that we're familiar, could be. Just happily consuming. Moving on. Yeah, I think I already asked it, but that's the reason, Marin, why we don't use Snow or Mendix for this specific purpose, and that's not slow down on progress. Maybe, Dennis, do you see that at other customers as well? Is that something you hear more often?
Yeah, it's a lot of some customers, they have a lot of applications and they just want to have all the data together in one platform. And the thing with the Snowflake database, it's way faster than the Mendix database. For example, it's more an analytical database, and it's also more for the data engineers and less for the developers.
Yeah.
So in that sense, a lot of customers like to use Snowflake to store data from different locations and do the data analysis parts on the Snowflake side.
I think that's a very good nuance, as in mainly for data engineering, like the data warehousing, those kind of solutions. Is it something, Frans, you recognize from customers that that's the main reason, or is there a trend towards transactional usage of Snowflake as well?
Well, I would say Snowflake started obviously as a platform 100% built for data engineers, but over the last few years it has grown to, it can do everything now. Obviously, data science, AI, all these types of fancy things that everybody wants, but also much more for like end consumers with GUIs that you can click and create a graph in a few seconds.
Yeah,
I have
Streamlit.
Streamlit, for instance, but I have something in my slide that will
perfect.
demo that as well.
That's a good
demo with a screenshot. So technically, demo.
Well, it's also, maybe this is the question. I don't know, but the direct connection, and I see that here as well, and you're referring to it now as well, like consumer apps directly touching your database. If you go pay per use, then I'm already afraid, like a Dutchie, like, oh, that will be expensive. So we need to add a cache, just as a reflex. But then you told me, well, that's not needed, basically. Frans, how do you see that? Is that?
That's Perry.
Yeah. Luckily, I correct that job.
So Snowflake knows like 3 different kinds of caching. You have query caching, warehouse caching, one other that I forget. So if you execute the same query, because that was your Cortex translate query, if you execute the same query every time, it is automatically generated from the query result cache within 24 hours. So every time you access that query, it doesn't need to do all the computations again. It will just fetch the data.
That's a good point. So at least
that works for. That's
not too long.
The only caveat is that I don't know if that works for Cortex functions, but I'm assuming so because they're also deterministic. And caching. So lots of things are cached, obviously. But if you have a transactional app, which they require different caches, then I think I would suggest putting like a Redis cache in between. But I'm not sure.
Still,
yeah. Because I think that's cheaper than having a virtual warehouse running 24/7. But that depends on.
Yeah, I consider strong edge cases. So that's when you work with a lot of consumers or a website or a big platform that asks all the question. I assume that we are mostly in business-oriented applications. Anyone who says no? Okay, then we're on the safe side. Thanks. I know that we're mostly Mendix engineers, Mendix makers, Mendix developers, Mendix consultants, give it a name, doing stuff with Mendix. Then Snowflake can be a new thing. So I'm looking for what kind of skills do we need within a team to do this properly, whatever the stretches of the word properly. But is there anyone who wants to tap in on that? As in, what do we feel that's needed to do either the DSI use case properly or maybe the DekaMarkt use case properly? Or something in between.
Now we don't develop, so it's up to CLEVR to develop. So I don't know exactly what you need to do.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good position to be in. As in,
I can tell.
Yeah, I think Dennis, you mentioned something. Yeah, and Mendix has an idea on this, right?
Yeah, technically. Any person can start and just build the application. You can need some basic Mendix knowledge and a basic Snowflake knowledge, but you can probably make a connection. But we don't recommend that for a production environment, of course. So If you want to have a real environment, then we need one expert on the part of Mendix and one data analyst or somebody that's more about making sure that everything is secure. But technically, if you want a proof of concept, they can be made by one person, and even there's a free trial kind of thing for Snowflake, so you don't need to even pay at the beginning. You can already create your first applications, kind of.
Yeah, so it's easy to get started, but eventually you feel like a data engineer or someone with this background is helpful in the project. One of the things I learned personally to tap in on that is this kind of architecture, like the medallion architecture. Is it something that's familiar to some of you who heard about it earlier? Otherwise, I will maybe repeat some boring stuff. Then I will continue, as in it's really separating how you handle data. As in, I've seen examples where Snowflake was as a trial, that it's flat in the database and then flat out of the database. And then all manipulations are on the fly, for example. What we see here in this architecture is that you have a clear raw landing zone where things land. So that will be your raw Mendix data potentially if you're using that one. Then you will do some aggregations on top of that. So we do that for DSI as well, in order as a first step for that reporting. We know the questions that will be asked, so we do some aggregations there. Just one-off store procedures, they're called. And then eventually you can use them in your gold layer, which is really the business value. So what are the things you actually want to see, the actionable insights, and you do that in the views on the very end. But thinking about this, besides the technology, is really helpful in your data journey. And I think it's part of every data engineering 101, I assume. And
our big environment, ilionx estimate is, except from the aggregation, that's not needed in Snowflake. But
we don't aggregate in Snowflake. We just say, we have, technically, obviously everything is cost dependent, but Snowflake is powerful enough to not need any aggregations.
Oh, that's nice. That's the level.
Everything at the lowest grain, lowest level, it's fine. It'll still perform.
So less maintenance, and we like less maintenance. That's a good addition. Thanks. I think there are more things to look for, actually, because we had some learnings as well, Marin, maybe.
I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe Joost as well, but we at least. It's maybe you can elaborate on the things that you should keep in the back of your mind when you start using Snowflake as a new customer, when you're used to Mendix, like the paper license and paper node.
Well, some learning we had was in the costing of Snowflake. I said earlier, we have cost like $60 a month, and then it was in his name 11:30, I guess. I get a bill from Snowflake. It was $1,200 a month.
We all remember this day.
So it was a bit scary, and it was a little Mendix task. We put in the Mendix data loader was an update from Mendix. So the Mendix data loader was broken. We fixed it, but we didn't get an alert in Datadog. So we thought, we have to know when it's broken. So we got a little Mendix task in, put in Snowflake. But what the Mendix task was doing was looking 2 hours in the future if the Mendix data loader was broken, not 2 hours in the past. So every 5 minutes, you run a full table scan with Snowflake. So we have to be ready from 6 euros to 1,200 euros. So lesson learned to always be aware of that little thing, because the task was 5 minutes for you, I guess.
To change it. Yeah, that's true. And I think because there is a good, the documentation of Mendix is really well. So there is this snippet, a SQL query you can insert to do this monitoring on your failed tasks, but you have some input fields, so things you can change. So then there is this human. Yes, that human, instead of a minus, puts in no minus, then it looks in the future. That's what happened, potentially. And that's what resulting in this. And this brings us maybe to another example of what's available in Snowflake when it comes to monitoring. This was about monitoring failed tasks. That was what we were looking for, but we also set up billing alerts. So you can also just look at billing in general and say, whenever I touch this threshold, send me an email or shut down this warehouse or do something. So there are some safety guards that you can introduce to be on the safe side. And that's something you might not be used to, but it's to all cloud vendors, so AWS, Azure, you name it. It's also to Snowflake. If you ask a lot of questions, you get a lot of costs. So don't ask questions or add monitoring. So that's thanks for explaining that, and hopefully it will save you something in the future. We're already closing in on the end of the panel discussion. Not actually there, but before we forget, I was very curious to hear if there's anything you really have on the tip of your tongue that you want to share with the audience, as in this is something we want to share for sure about our Snowflake experience and journey. I see Dennis is already like, yeah.
We have a bit about it in the presentation, but because we are developing the connectors, we want to hear kind of from you guys if you're missing something, or if you want to, mostly what your experience is and what you could use that we can build on top of. Because currently we don't have much on the roadmap, but if there's something super specific that you want, we can have a look if there's a need for that.
Great.
Open
So,
invitation.
Yeah.
Feel free.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it right now, but you can do it at the end of
I'm
the.
so happy to meet him here because I need something for the Mendix data loader. So
Yes.
we will do.
Force his plenty of time to.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, that's fine. That's nice. I
Can't give a specific time when it will be ready.
read the ASAP because
But we are always looking for improvements or things that
Or maybe you want to take it over the plus something.
I have a presentation soon.
Then we will wait for a moment.
Yeah, that's all I want to say. That's all I want to say.
Joost, is there anything you want to share before we
No, not check food.
just happy as it is, I would say.
Both partners, ilionx and CLEVR, and working together and getting a nice future-proof environment.
Yeah, that's really nice that it's bringing that value to you.
Yes.
Great words. Yeah.
I didn't use it just to understand better. As I still am not sure, is it like in a Mendix on a database should be in Snowflake, or can it be introduced in data load on application Alex on an existing domain model and entities? So is it a communication way tool, or is it database and communication?
Oh, it's a good question. It's good to clarify that here. So I will briefly repeat it for the recording. And that's whether the Snowflake database should be part of your Mendix application itself, so that it's part of your database structure, etc., or that it's some kind of communication thing that you externally. We can consider Snowflake as an external service, like to the fullest. So it's a external database server that you use, just like you would, for example, use. Now I have only bad examples. But if you have an external SQL server or an Oracle database from some kind of big old ERP that you want to connect to, that will be a similar approach when it comes to Mendix, I would say. So it will always live as a third-party service, and that's also, it's still working. You can see that here as well. This is the Mendix application, and Snowflake here is actively pulling data, pulls in this case, but it can push as well. You can do SQL on Snowflake. So
Still be on-premise with Snowflake.
yes, Deka is using it partially on-premise. Yeah, good questions. Thanks in between, and hopefully happy to answer them now. But if we can keep them for a slight moment, then but that's a good one to have that clear. Martin, is there something you wanted to share?
Yeah, well, it's like this picture.
Oh,
With the future, that's also a reason why we chose Snowflake, because we now have Mendix app, like we have more apps in place, like CRM system, like our website, and we want to combine that data to get learnings from it and to expose them maybe to our customers. And then Snowflake is also use things to add the keyword list.
great addition. Thank you very much for that. And thank you all very much. Hopefully those insights were beneficial to you, and make sure to use them to the fullest in the hour after these presentations to ask what we need. And hopefully we have some time for Q&A at the end of this all. But first off, a big round of applause for our panelists. Okay. And then I will hand over the presentation.
So all the laptop switching through the room. It works.
Yes.
We can breathe safely. So, Mendix meets Snowflake. Obviously, Jeroen already said quite a few things. I wanted to say it well, but that's fine. You know, I will just gloss over them. And if you have questions about it, then it's fine. No demos. I don't do demos. I do very short slides with screenshots that show you. That's a deep dive. Who am I? I'm Frans. I spend most of my week as a data solution architect, data architect, whatever. I do that mostly also for DekaMarkt and Dirk van den Broek, who have been my client for the last, I don't know, 5.5 years. But I was there way in the beginning when they became our client 15 years ago. I'm also a product owner for our internal solution, and I'm a tech lead or technical director, whatever, somebody that has an opinion about everything related to tech. And I've been doing that at Energy. So I started there 17 years ago, a little bit more than 17 years ago. And since this year, we've been now ilionx. But mostly Energy was a very large, or is a very large, depends on how you play with your tenses, Snowflake partner. And so if I say here, when this is a timeline, ilionx x Snowflake, it's also Energy x Snowflake, just kind of mashes together in my head. So in 2019, Q4, I did a proof of concept with some cash register data, point of sales data, and we decided, well, to see if this is a good solution to replace our on-prem IBM Netezza appliance. I don't know if you know what IBM Netezza is. I hope you know what IBM is. But IBM Netezza was a huge black box with lots of servers in it, blades we called them, and they were very good at analytical online analytical processing. So that was fantastic. That was the future 17 years ago. But in 2019 it started to feel a little bit outdated, and we found Snowflake, and that proof of concept worked because in 2020 we migrated our first client, which was not, as you might not be surprised, DekaMarkt, then under the name of Detailresult. We started a partnership with Snowflake because the technology was really pretty cool, and they were up and coming young. They wanted us. It was a pretty good match. In 2022, we finished the rest of our migrations. So that's like 6 clients, I guess, a few large ones, and we became the second premier partner in the Benelux. We missed out on spot number 1 by like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. But okay, it helped. It's a long time ago. Water under the bridge. In 2024, now 15 plus new clients, certifications, events. Everything is going very smoothly with Snowflake. They're growing. Energy was growing. In 2023, which was actually in here, we were acquired by ilionx, and now in 2025 we are ilionx. We merged the partnerships. Administrative work, boring. I won't bore you with that, but it was a lot of hard work. But now Snowflake sees us as a large partner who can do more than just data platforms. We can also do hands-on consultancy, etc. In 2020, this was the picture that was used to describe Snowflake. I think it was a pitch that we used in 2019, and it's a very it's a manageable picture. You can see it has centralized storage, as you already said. It had separate compute clusters. Well, I should do this one, sorry. Separation of compute and storage, on-demand scaling. It has t-shirt sizes, so you have an XS that costs less money. You can go all the way to Excel and you will pay more, but your query will finish quicker. It's cloud agnostic, so it runs on Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure. It has all kinds of built-in security and governance things, like role-based access control. What was pretty novel were the bottom 2 ones, native data sharing. So you can actually share data with another Snowflake client through like 5 clicks. And we use that actually. I think we're one of the only ones in the Netherlands who use that. We share data from, we share a point of sale data with another Snowflake client who then uses it in their analytics model. But the best thing ever was cloning and time travel. Jeroen already explained what cloning is. Like with zero copy cloning, you have a huge database, create database, clone, and it's not necessarily instant, but depending on how large your database is, it is nearly instant. And compared to where we came from, where it took 2 days to restore a database from prod to dev, it's still beautiful. And with time travel, you can actually go back to any point in time in the last 90 days to see what was the state of your data. So if you have a record that says Janssen, you want to see what it said 2 days ago, and then you said it said Appel. You can actually see that. You can actually query the data like it was 3 days ago or 9 days ago. Absolutely fantastic, mind-blowing. But now we're in 2025 and the picture changed to this, because obviously Snowflake develops further and they add all kinds of new features based on also, competition. And we have all kinds of new things. So you can now throw in all kinds of data, structured data, normal tables, semi-structured, JSON, XML, and unstructured, you can put in your PDFs and it can parse them for you. You can talk SQL, Python, Java, Scala. I don't know who uses Scala, but they support it. Yeah?
You're pro.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know either. Scala is for me something I tried 15 years ago. Horizon Catalog, which is, actually explain what it is. We have native apps in the marketplace, Snowflake ML, where you have, you can run your data science and advanced analytics workloads directly on Snowflake. So bring your difficult linear regression model directly to your data instead of getting your data into your linear regression models. You can run container services. You can run a Docker container in Snowflake. Very cool. You can use it for all kinds of apps. New since the summer is OpenFlow and dbt. OpenFlow is actually the ingestion tool that they acquired. So they acquired an ingestion tool to get data from all kinds of sources into your Snowflake platform. Think Oracle, SQL, but also Excel and all the fancy API things like Google Analytics, etc. And dbt is a tool that you can use to apply business ruling and transformation to your data. Now also running natively within Snowflake. Very cool. And there it is, Cortex. Already mentioned, but I will highlight these three quickly. So, this is 2025. This is now the picture. That's incredible. I don't know where we are in 5 years. I hope it still fits in the circle. Maybe it's 2 circles, a sphere. Horizon Catalog. So that's very much an example of Snowflake giving a name to a ton load of features. So they have one name, they decided we need a name for that, but it's all kinds of things like data metric functions. So you can have data quality checks on your column. So how many nil values you have, how many values you have where it's the integer larger than X. You get an alert for that. Data lineage, I have a field here, I have a value here, where did it come from in the data? Tagging, you can tag, for instance, personal identifiable information. You can check that and you can apply data masking, for instance, so you can see that you are not allowed to see my PYY data, but he is, so then if he uses Snowflake, he won't see anything, but you will. Trust Center is a whole thing where you can apply the center for computer something. They have all kinds of strict guidelines about how you can best practices. I shouldn't say strict guidelines, best practices on how you should use Snowflake. Authorization controls, like I said already, are back, but also other things. Data clean, so much more. That everything fits in that picture there, and it's more than that because you can also. There's far too much to say, but it's a really large amount of features that they support within the Horizon catalog. Then native apps, the marketplace. So you have a simplified app development, distribution, monetization. You can build once and deliver to all your organizations using Snowflake. The most famous example being the Mendix. Dennis is my new best friend. He's going to help me use the Mendix data loader correctly. Nice. Then Cortex AI. Somebody asked what Cortex was behind me. So one of you, I guess. Cortex is like the catch-all term for everything generative AI. You have all kinds of models you can run. You can use AI SQL, which is like the add-on to the normal SQL language, which also Jeroen just showed. You can use AI transcribe, translate sentiment, things. You just select AI translate or AI transcribe, and you can get the transcription from your unstructured data. Document AI. Remember I told you you can use unstructured data on your Snowflake, give it a whole bucket of PDFs, and say parse these PDFs, and it will actually just work. You know, if you have patient forms, the canonical example is patient forms from a hospital, and you can just load them easily. And new since last month, because it's December, Snowflake Intelligence. It went GA 4th of November, and it's new. It's like talk to your data. It's very cool. It's now possible to ask whatever you want of your data. So this is a screenshot from my colleague. So it's not actually from the website. That's as far a demo as I will go. You have a data set, and my colleague asked the total sales in Europe. And what you can see on the left-hand side is that it's reasoning, and then it's executing just SQL. You can see my colleague's name is Jorik. And then on the right-hand side, you have the data that is outputting based on that. So it's automatically showing you a graph, breakdown per country. It's pretty incredible. It's like, ChatGPT, but for your actual data, and it doesn't leave your Snowflake environment. We are a launch partner for this. That's pretty cool. So we are actually doing we're working with a few of our clients and doing hands-on labs and data for that. What I forgot to say, you can even take the research option. There's a research option somewhere there. And then Snowflake will deep reason about what it's seeing. So it will actually try to, come up with explanations and things like that. We've seen a few hallucinations, but most of it, especially this part, really works. And the deep reasoning is a little bit, So why do we want that? Well, what we believe is we believe in bringing simplicity to a complex world. That's what we do. We do it with standard components. For instance, all our data platforms have this conceptual data model. Which is very well familiar now. So Jeroen already mentioned it. I can just skip that. We have data that lives in sources. We ingest that in bronze or in a data area, depending on how you call that. We call it ingestion. Then you have integration. In silver, you integrate that data into business logic. What is an article? What is revenue? What is sales, etc. And in gold, you model the data to a specific application. So what Joost said, where you have views that define what the application will see, is that we do that in gold. Well, we have all kinds of accelerators, metadatabase extraction, so it's extracting data with a few clicks. We have connectors, the Mendix data loader, for instance, but also extracting data from AFOS or Exact or whatever. Generic target file formats, login and monitoring if something goes wrong, all kinds of fancy stuff. So, I fully believe that Snowflake, you can offer powerful support for whatever you ask of it. Model it in Mendix, answer the difficult questions with Snowflake, and let us help you with that. Thank you, and I want to use much more time than expected. Sorry.
No,
that's it.
Okay. I don't have a fancy introduction slide about myself, but I think Jeroen did a great job at explaining my backgrounds. So I want to talk a bit about what we have available as Mendix and how you can combine it with Snowflake, and also a little bit maybe some extra information that I'm able to tell. So one of the use cases we want to people want to use Snowflake for is more for storing the data and doing analysis on top of it. But not only, so you can see these are all different environments where the data comes from. So you can use SAP data, like Microsoft Power Apps, all those things are able to be pulled towards Snowflake. And so, and the idea is you can use Snowflake as a hub for doing the data analysis. And what we think, but I want to also know, able to hear from the people actually are in the field. So correct me if I'm wrong, but for example, what we experience is that the Streamlit application from Snowflake, that they are more, they're more difficult to develop than a Mendix application. So if you want to use, this is our use case that we had in our head, but I want to also experience what your use cases are. Of course, that's one of the reasons why I'm at this meeting. So if you want to use Mendix as the front end, you can combine all these different platforms, all the data, and use Mendix as a front end with nice graphs and things like that, which are also discussed before. But on top of that, maybe you have Mendix, of course, also as a data source. So some customers, I'm not going to call any names, some people have like dozens of applications and they want to use Snowflake to have to see in like the performances of those applications. And maybe they don't use Mendix as the front end, but Mendix does count as a data source that is being used in the database. So this is kind of the setup that I had in my head. So what do we as Mendix have available? We have, there's a few things available to make it easier for you, but also some connectors. So the first two are specifically Mendix connectors. So it's the JDBC one and the REST SQL one. And the JDBC is using the external database connector. Some people might know about it, but I'm going to explain a little bit further. And the difference between the two is that the right one has some extra functionalities that you might need that you can't do with the first one. And Cortex Analyst, which was also discussed before, is way more compatible with the REST SQL one. There are some security things. So I will also go a little bit in depth on that. And for the Snowflake people, the other way around, the data loader is there for retrieving the Mendix data into your Snowflake environment. And to make everything easier for everybody, we created a Snowflake showcase application that explains all these things that I just said in an easier way by just downloading an application and pressing play. And hopefully, so far, people are happy to learn new things. And if you need something more, just give us a message, maybe. So the concepts, the ideas, you have a lot of data. And with data ingestion, you combine this data inside of Snowflake. So for example, Mendix data from different applications, you can use the Mendix data loader, which is already being used by some people. But you can also use the other two that I just talked about, the REST SQL and the database connector. But you can also get your SAP data, your AWS data, all the other things that I talked about before. And the idea is the Mendix environment, the Snowflake environment is doing the data transformation. So you're transforming it from raw data into transformed data, which is also shortly talked about. That is more like the part about the views in Snowflake that is easier to display it in a graph, for example. The Mendix data loader is 100% on getting the data inside of Snowflake, and it's being used also over longer time. So let's say some customers want to pull all the data every day, for example, but you can't go the other way around. You can't get your Snowflake data inside of Mendix by using the data loader. And that's why we have the other two. And the difference between the REST SQL and the external database connector is the Cortex part I just talked about, and this will also be explained in the showcase. So it's the AI part is more complex. There's more possibilities from if you use the REST SQL one. And also things like RBAC, which is also discussed before. That's also not completely possible with external database connector. So we always kind of recommend to use this one because it's more easier to understand and more recognizable. But if you need the other one, we still have it for this specific two use cases. Because maybe some customers want to have more security or some special use cases where you might consider to use this connector. But in general, we are trying to always push the external database connector. Okay, then also there's some people that have not that much Mendix and experience and are more from the Snowflake sides. And for those people, we also have some quick starts, like the Mendix quick starts on the official Snowflake website. So if you've never done anything with Mendix, I have no idea how many people here are in that part, but there's maybe some people watching at home, if you have no experience, you can scan the QR code, but I don't know if there's enough time for that. And that will send you to this page, and this is all the possibilities we have available on how to use Mendix in combination with Snowflake for the Snowflake developer. On top of these two examples that I gave, we have some applications, these are applications that are not real applications, but they're like proof of concept to show what are the possibilities. Why would you use Mendix in combination with Snowflake? And the first one is the A4 application, and it's an application about a factory that creates cars. And the idea is the application has the historical data from Snowflake. They're being using Snowflake Cortex. I will also talk a little bit about that in depth, and nice graphs and things. So we think that's, I don't want to put any words in somebody's mouth, but I think that making a front end on Mendix can have like a positive effect on top of the Streamlit from Snowflake, because it's easier to understand. And a lot of people here, of course, are also Mendix developers. So in this case, this application is a Mendix application with a backend from Snowflake. So here is the F4 application with the screen, also another QR code. And for this chat that we built, there is a part of Cortex Analyst. So in this case, the whole story is there are like, I think maybe there's 5 or 10 factories, and this is the one in Philadelphia. And there's information about how good is the performance of the factory, and maybe the quality is not the best. And then with the question that we asked to the AI is, what are the machines with the most frequent downtimes? And then it will give you the direct information based on what is in the database. And this is one of the use cases where you would we use Cortex Analysts. And if you scan the QR code, you get a video about this whole concept. So if you want to see more in depth, but you can also find it on the YouTube channel for the Mendix one. And the second use case is the Lato application, which takes a step further. So this one it's a mobile application in Mendix with also a backend for the business. So the idea is it's kind of like the NS when you have like those bikes that you can rent. So you see on the map, these bikes are available. So you can walk to there, use the app to check in, and then you can see how much money you will have to pay and how much battery is in the application. And the admins can see on the right, on the desktop, they can see which bikes are performing well, which have problems, and also what is the temperature today and tomorrow, and later in the week. Okay, then I wanted to do a little bit, but what I said before, why would you use like the external database connector, and why would you use the SQL one? This is one example. This is you ask the AI for a question. This is about how you can see, like the process in the background is you ask a question and then you get an answer back, but it's not that easy, of course. So you ask a question, that question gets converted into a SQL query. That SQL query is being used to get the answer. And then there's another AI on top of it that explains the answer. And then you get as a result, there were 3,234 trips. So these are 3 different calls, and it is not possible to do this exact use case with the external database connector. But this is a super specific use case. I think most customers don't want to necessarily need this, but you should consider for some use cases that you might still want to use the REST SQL connector. And on the right, you can see the external database connector. And since this year, we support the Snowflake connection. The whole idea of the external database connector is literally in the name. You're connecting to external databases. So for example, usually SQL databases, so like Oracle, MySQL, Postgres. And now you can also, it's now supported to do a Snowflake call directly. And you've also seen that in the previous presentations, of course. So this is the famous Mendix environment. So instead of doing weird things through the REST calls, and now you can actually do it through the Mendix platform. So that's pretty cool. And there's a video again if you want it, but it's on the same YouTube channel as the previous one. yeah, so these were some things that I wanted to share with you all. And I'm really open to hear if maybe you're missing something, maybe you have an amazing idea. You can always share it with me. And I'm not going to promise we're going to build it, but we will put it on the backlog and consider using this. And that's kind of my presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis. And I think that opens up the floor to questions as well. So maybe the first ones could be those feature requests. You can save them for the end. I think that's safe. That's thanks. Is there anyone who has already? I think most of you want to try it. Peter.
Basically, I actually tried to establish national study and this method, but when I get to the connection for that station, is it was possible with the CLEVR?
Yes.
Focus?
It is possible, but you need to do some extra steps. But we have a lot of documentation on how to set this up.
So, like, I think the tokens.
Oh, I will look into that then.
Or checking how it says as well.
Yeah, let me know if you Just this didn't put my email here, but yeah, it's my name somewhere. It's my name with a dot in between.
We'll share it for you later as well.
Hey, perfect.
Then we can make it part of that.
The options.
Cool.
So the question was about authentication and if the more modern options are available. Yeah, we were a bit too late to give you the mic. That's fine.
It is possible at least, and we know how to do it, so we can at least update the documentation if it's perfect.
Maybe other feature requests, questions for Frans, Joost, Marin. Anyone? Yeah? Oh, yeah.
Okay.
For those in the far middle,
Like,
oh, yeah, we need those.
then this sort of also makes me think of vector databases like V8 or here I think that the whole idea of working up your information from prompts to goal probably is counterintuitive towards comparisons with vector databases. So I'm just thinking here, what offsets the Snowflake use case against using something like the new vector databases where you can really ask those 10 questions and get those 5 items from the database. What's the most expensive item for the last 5 years in Paris? Just wondering about that. So is there a future core Power BI like questioning in something like Snowflake, or is it going to pivot towards pure vector databases? So make some bit technical.
Yeah, I can. I obviously don't know what the future will bring. Snowflake can't pivot to a vector database based on how it's built, so it's really just a relational database. Is there a future for Power BI? That's a very good question. Is there a future for Tableau? Is there a future for business objects? The answer is obviously, but obvious. I think the first company that can have a Power BI like equivalent on a vector database can make a lot of money. But I think so at this moment in time, vector databases are nice for obviously LLMs and all those Gen AI things, but not for the normal consumer, in my opinion.
It's a good question, and that field is moving per century, of course. That you have different kind of databases, different kind of approaches, and especially like you mentioned, like this silver layer, we don't even use it anymore, or partially, because we don't need it in Snowflake. That's also kind of a shift in.
You can.
You can
need to use it. You can use it virtually. It helps if you have your own set of business rules somewhere defined, and we define that in Silver.
Yeah.
But you can define that physically as a table. You can define it virtually as a view. But it's good to have the rules somewhere.
Yeah, that's
just my opinion, I guess.
You have any additional questions? The things we've heard. All eager to have some drinks.
Yeah.
Well, then for one last time, I had this slide, like what's next really? Like now we are using Snowflake everywhere. I don't think so. So we still need to keep our minds fresh. which is ironically today, but make decisions and not overcomplicate things that we don't need to overcomplicate, of course. So hopefully it opens up your options a bit, that you know what's out there, what you can use, and well, the Q&A we already had. Before we move to the drinks, I want to ask all presenters, so Joost, Frans, Dennis, Maren, because we have some no chocolate.
Well,
Well, before we give them one final round of applause, we want to give you all this present for today, because I was very happy to have so much experience and knowledge here, and make use of that, right? In the next hour, it's all yours. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we'll talk.
And now you think, well, now I go home empty-handed. But that's not true, because we've got you all. So before you leave the office, you can take one gift home to keep your Windows eyes free. That's the thing to do that. Yeah, Snowflake free. Like Snowflake free.
Is true. What's that? Yes.